Mosquitoes are a nuisance at best and a health risk at worst. Let's talk about effective ecological controls of mosquito management at home. I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. If you have a homestead and you start having animals and you start having gardens and different things, you're going to have areas where water accumulates. Maybe in managing your erosion, you end up with sediment ponds, you end up with detention basins and other stuff where water tends to accumulate as it disperses throughout the land. And of course, the popular models of swales can cause, during a rainy season, to actually have rivers of water everywhere that's not even moving. Now, the reason that stagnant water is important to manage is because it becomes the breeding ground for mosquitoes. Mosquitoes can deliver dengue fever, all kinds of diseases, and really cause a problem in human establishments. So what are effective ways to manage mosquitoes so that you have fewer mosquitoes and then the mosquitoes that you do have become predated for birds and for other creatures that are more beneficial in your environment? Well, first off, most people approach mosquito management with ineffective control strategies, which include insecticides that are not only toxic to pollinators, but also toxic to beneficial insects. So they kill the mosquitoes, but they also kill the food sources for beneficial birds. They kill predatory insects and such that could reduce other issues you have, or otherwise poison fish and impact your food supply. So what are ecological approaches? Well, first off, we got to understand what a mosquito is and some of the key characteristics of mosquitoes. So a mosquito is actually a minor pollinator. So a mosquito, they drink the blood of animals and people, and they also use a small amount of pollination for carbohydrates in order to survive, and so they accidentally and deliberately pollinate some flowers. Now, that alone is valuable, but there are other insects that pollinate much better. So the mason bees and bumblebees and other flies that do much better job at pollination. So we don't want mosquitoes for pollination necessarily, but they're not completely bad. Mosquitoes are also food at the very bottom of the food chain. So their larvae, their eggs, the mosquitoes themselves are all food. Now here's the challenge. A mosquito can lay their eggs in stagnant water as small as what would fit in a bottle cap. So somebody flicks off a beer cap somewhere, mosquitoes in a full beer cap can double their population size in 5 to 8 days just with that small amount of water. Now that water is too small for a predatory fish. It's too small for other types of creatures that might eat the larva, and ultimately is dangerous. So it's not necessarily our big bodies of water that we need to manage when it comes to the mosquito. It is these small bodies of water that unfortunately can be as small as what fits inside of a leaf. Now, when you understand this, that it feeds on microorganisms in the water, it needs still water, and in 5 to 8 days, a mosquito can go from larva to adult mosquito, you start to realize that controlling the water habitat is not going to be the most effective way. And even spraying is not the most effective way because, again, we're killing off things that can eat the mosquito. So we're going to talk about effective mosquito control. You do want to reduce standing water, including sources that are breeding habitat. And that is small bodies of water, like the water that may set in your gutter, the water that's in flower pots, the water that's in a trash can, your rain barrels, for example. You want to have preventative measures to keep mosquitoes out of rain barrels. Now, you don't have to worry as much about mosquitoes in your fish pond, especially if you have a natural pond. And you don't have to worry about mosquitoes as much in larger bodies of water that have some kind of circulation. Because again, a mosquito does not breed in water that is moving or a large body of water, which we'll talk about later, it has a high probability of predation. You want to do this early, before the spring and the summer. Now, a mosquito egg can overwinter, and because a mosquito can lay an egg late summer and it survived to the next season, these bodies of water need to be maintained. And again, you don't want things that puddle up. You want clean and clear water. You want water with fish in it. You want water that has enough plant matter so that things like dragonflies and different kinds of flies that eat the mosquito can breed. You want water that's clean, because the things that eat mosquito larvae tend to live in clean water. And so you want to start early in spring cultivating the habitat of beneficial insects, birds, for example. So let's say you have a detention basin. That doesn't have moving water. You could put a fountain in it. You want to make sure the fountain has a screen on it so it doesn't pull dragonfly larvae and other things through it. You want to make sure you have amphibious habitat, so frogs eat the mosquito. You want to make sure it has bird habitat nearby, fish habitat, bat habitat, and of course habitat for dragonflies. Now, the body of water, the larger the body of water, the more likely these mosquito predators can have a healthy and successful life. You're not going to eliminate the mosquito, but you are going to create an environment where the mosquito is less likely to lay eggs, and then if it were to lay eggs, they have a lower probability of survival. This is very important. So that water, when you water a plant, you might have a little basin around the bottom. That water in the bottom of the basin is going to be a more appealing habitat for the mosquito to lay eggs, and therefore more important to dump out than a large body of water that has maybe 1,000 square foot surface area. Because again, that 1,000 square foot surface area is ideally suited for dragonfly larvae, for amphibians, for fish, for bats to fly over in the middle of the night, for many natural enemies. Also, in a larger natural pond, you can start encouraging native plants such as grasses, lilies, different things like that will actually improve the habitat of natural predators to mosquitoes, but provide perches, provide hiding places for things that eat mosquitoes, and then ultimately some visual enjoyment for yourself. So the water does need to have vegetation, because that's habitat for dragonflies, damselflies, diving beetles, water bugs, copepods, and all these things feed on the mosquito larvae. Tall, warm grass above your pond area allows birds to perch, allows dragonflies to perch, and then they can swoop in and eat the mature mosquitoes. Now, again, most people use pesticides and sprays, which kills the beneficial insects, because I just named off a whole big handful of insects that don't bother humans but love to eat mosquitoes. Well, unfortunately, even the plant-based pesticides or insecticides will kill these off, and then the only thing that survives is the mosquitoes themselves. Because remember, a mosquito can go from egg to a mature mosquito in 5 to 8 days. So if there isn't anything ready to eat the eggs, or ready to eat the larva, or ready to eat the mature mosquito, then they will just keep multiplying. And so what usually happens is a city will spray an airborne spray. It ends up on the concrete. It ends up on plants. It ends up harming all the predators or natural enemies of the mosquito. And then ultimately, those mosquitoes can breed faster in small bodies of water, because they need, again, a warm, stagnant, small body of water that's nutritional, has a lot of nutrition in it, a lot of microbes, and that is free of predators. So by introducing bodies of water that have lots of predators and environments where predators thrive, then it doesn't matter where the mosquito hatches. Now, again, in the preventative treatment, you do need to keep dumping out the water for like dog bowls and things, because a dog that ingests mosquito larvae can have health problems associated with that. And then a lot of these small bodies of water tend to be where humans spend their time. Now you might be saying, Justin, you haven't eliminated the mosquitoes. If I spray, it feels like there's no mosquitoes. It feels like I did something substantial. But ultimately, there are no flying creatures because you've killed them all, and there's nothing to eat the mosquitoes that will eventually come. But it turns out mosquitoes are not very good at flying. So in your human areas, you can use mosquito screens and nets, so you can have a screened-in porch. You can use a fan to circulate air, because mosquitoes can't fly in moving air. Now, a typical mosquito can travel 20 miles, but it's got to be warm, humid air and very still. Otherwise, it can only get about a half a mile. So again, you want to stay away from sprays that are toxic to fish. You want to stay away from sprays that we're going to retain on your landscape, and then the next time it rains, they're simply going to wash away. And you want to focus instead on managing your growing areas to be habitat for predators who will eat mosquitoes. Again, mosquitoes breed so quickly that they will overcome any temporary measures of spraying. The city sprays because they have to feel like they're doing something, rather than supporting like Bee City, for example, or natural landscaping. The spraying is an instant solution. It feels like something's happening, but ultimately it is ineffective. It is a waste of resources and ultimately doesn't solve the underlying root cause of the mosquito, is that there aren't very many predators. So let me leave you with a practical solution that you can start doing today to reduce the amount of mosquitoes that you have in your property, but also in the neighborhood in which you live. Number one is to stop spraying. Insecticides kill more than the mosquito, and they harm a valuable source of the food chain, which would ultimately outpredate the mosquito. So, for example, the mosquito is a food source for 15 to 20 different creatures that have no impact on humans. So birds, bats, dragonflies, all kinds of water bugs and creatures, amphibians, all of these creatures predate on the mosquito, and they need the mosquito for their food source, but they also have a diverse food range in which if they ate all the mosquitoes, they can find other stuff to eat as well, but it would moderate the population of these other creatures. Next is you want in your yard areas for wildflowers and plants to invite other insects that pollinate in order to build up the food base to attract birds that will predate on mosquitoes. Now again, your wildflower garden or your natural habitat or your local plants or your regional native plants, these things can be beautiful landscapes that are both enjoyable visually, but also provide habitat for birds, frogs, lizards, dragonflies, pollinating bees, honeybees, pollinating insects, predatory insects. And this builds up the bank so that if you happen to have you're away on vacation for 2 weeks or away for a week and you have a flower pot that's been saturated with water, you're not going to be breeding mosquitoes that you'll have to deal with when you get back. You're going to have creatures that will eat those mosquitoes. They'll land on the pot, they'll eat the mosquito larvae out of it, and they'll go off and leave you with less frustration and headache. You also want to design your entertainment or outdoor recreation areas so that they have a ceiling fan, so that you even have a standing fan to keep air moving, because mosquitoes cannot fly through areas that have moving air or moving water. So a fountain on your porch is better than kind of a stagnant fishbowl. Now again, if you have a fishbowl and it's large enough to sustain the fish will eat the larvae. So the mosquito will be attracted to the pond, the fish will eat the mosquito eggs and larvae, and you've stopped the breeding cycle. Now what about attractants and other types of things that attract the mosquito and trap it? Well, anytime you use hormones or CO2 or anything like that attracts mosquitoes, you may be drawing mosquitoes in from more than a half a mile away. So somebody who's not as diligent about creating natural habitat or favoring natural predators and mosquitoes, somebody who's not pouring out stagnant water that's around their house, they're going to be breeding mosquitoes that you would then attract to your property and have to deal with. So again, it's better to focus on natural habitat because it promotes the enemies of the mosquitoes, and then ultimately manage your individual space where you might be sitting out on the porch so that it is less desirable for the mosquitoes. Mosquitoes are attracted to carbon dioxide. Some individuals have pheromones and hormones that attract mosquitoes more than others. But if you simply sit in front of a fan, the fan air is too strong for that mosquito to come in. Now, I have used BT, which is Bacillus thermogenet, whatever the hell it is. That works well, but again, it kills other insects in the ecosystem, so it's not ideal. And I've lived in neighborhoods that use aerial sprays, and they will promise you that it's safe, but it does cause respiratory issues and other problems. So again, promotion of the natural enemies is the most effective and consistent way to manage mosquito populations. Screen your rain barrels, have larger bodies of water rather than smaller bodies of water, making sure you've got moving air and you're dumping out stagnant water, and you've also increased biodiversity. I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. And look, it doesn't matter if you're in the armpit of Florida or you're across Maryland or any other place that gets hot and humid during the day. You can actively manage mosquitoes and reduce the population so it's no longer a nuisance. More importantly, is you can reduce the disease vectors by having creatures in the environment that destroy the mosquito population. And ultimately, this is something that you can do in your yard but impact a 20-mile radius of your particular property. Because again, the natural enemies of mosquitoes travel much further than mosquitoes. So a dragonfly can go 2 or 3 miles down the road. A bird can go 30 or 40 miles down the road. And so again, it's the holistic approach that gets you to the long-term results. If you have any questions about what I've covered today, visit me at www.prosperityhomestead.org. Go to the contact page and ask your questions. This is a hot topic in many communities. I've had people threaten to sue me because I had a pond in my backyard. I've had, it's not even a pond, it's a detention basin. I've had city officials come tell me that I can't have a fish pond because it's going to attract mosquitoes. There are many misunderstandings associated with this. I would encourage you to educate yourself. The Xerces Society, and there's other research that's coming out that shows that the natural habitat of enemies of the mosquito are the most effective solution, and that is appealing visually to humans. It creates a desirable environment when it comes to birds and wildlife, and ultimately is the holistic approach to removing mosquitoes from your small farm or homestead. Thanks for listening. I'm looking forward to your questions and success stories. I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead.